All right, just going to quickly review what happened. So you have the SPY. So I mean, it was being dumped, and then it had this big thrust. This, in my opinion, is like a trap. So it was going down. I mean, if you got in, great, but it's very hard to trade. The range is ridiculous. So anyway, so on this down wave, you have about 254 stocks on 109,000 shares. After that, you had 177 stocks advance on 81,000, pulled back on 83 stocks on 46,000. So, I mean, this is where it dried up. After that, you had almost 300 stocks on 116,000 shares. Then it did a little up move right here, but then this was very telling because you had about 187,000, right? 187,000 shares, stocks on an increase on 101,000 shares. So that right there was like was telling. So you combining the pressure, the stocks that are going down with the volume, and this volume increased. So at first you're like, I don't know, but the pullbacks were so weak. I mean, imagine 101,000, and you know what it pulled back on? 16,000. 101,000 down, 16,000 shares up, 27,000 shares up, then 23,000 shares, then only 10,000 shares. So that is the end. So this was the tell. And this was the break. After that, it just went down. If you didn't catch it here, you could have caught it here because this was 322 stocks on 76,000. Obviously, like, the initial is the most amount of selling pressure. Then it's going to be less. Then it's going to be less, and then it's going to turn. So 101,000 shares sold, then 76,000, then 66,000. So I mean, I expect that already. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. So 101,000, then it goes down on 76,000 shares, but I want to see the bounce to see how much volume comes out on it. You had about 75 stocks, 19,000 shares, 9,000 shares, 19,000 shares, 16,000 shares. This is not buying pressure because you're comparing the selling here to the buying. 76,000 shares. How many stocks net? 322 stocks. How many advanced? 75. There's no fucking way this thing is going to go up, other than test. So when you have only 19,000, 9,000, it's not enough buying pressure. And then after that, cracked right here, and it went down. Now here it gets tricky because look, it went from 101,000 to 76,000 to 66,000 on this down rally. So on that down rally, you have to be careful because whatever, because it's decreasing, but it how should I say this? It's still weak. It picks up here and picks up here. So here it picks up. You have 127 stocks on 32,000, then only 93 stocks on 36,000. It's a little bit of effort reward, but nothing like substantial. Here, this is a warning. Why? Because supply came back in. The supply comes back in when you have 113,000 on 48,000 shares. What's the pullback? It's only 17. So that's a good sign. Now I'm not too crazy about it because look, it's going from 101,000. The selling waves are going from 101, 76 to 66 to 48. It's not too crazy. So don't expect too much. it could just rip you in the other direction. But there's more selling than on the strongest buying wave. So I know that the sellers are in control. Here it tests, comes down until this point where you have 119 on 51,000. But this is the end of the day. I can't really make sense of it. So at the end of the day, all the volume goes crazy. Beginning of the day, volume goes crazy. So can't really make sense of it. Here you see a lot of stocks advancing on increasing thrust, increasing shares. Test. This is more selling pressure than that wave. So it's just a ding dong in the end of the day. The real move was right here. It went down 187 on 101,000, followed by weak pullbacks. Those weak pullbacks are telling you I am screwed. Alright, the bulls are not going to make it. They're not going to make it. Why? There's no volume pressure. If there's no volume pressure, there's no buying activity. If there's no buying activity, sellers will say, you know what? Let's step in. And that's what happened. And that's why you got this moves down. So the other thing to know, like over here, you had some selling pressure, 515 stocks on 172,000, pulled back on only 19. So, you know, until about here, where it went from 19 to 81. You know, then the buying pressure came in, but it was only testing, and sellers came back in right at resistance. So anyway, what's the point? The point is, after you have a selling wave, which has an expansion in what? Expansion in volume with stock participation, you need to look at the pullbacks to see what the response is. If it's weak, that is a very good indication that prices will continue to go in the direction of the higher volume. So in this case, 101 down, only 16 up. Chances are it's going to continue to go in this direction. All right. The only thing that would have confused you was this background right here, where you had 299 on 115,000 shares. So yes, that will confuse you. So how do you reconcile that? And A, it's through experience, but B, it's also through watching the supply pattern. The pattern of supply here is what? Right here was decreasing, right? Right here is decreasing. What happens after that? Increasing. So watching that pattern of supply is really important. All right. So you need to keep in mind the demand pattern and the supply, not just compare supply to demand. Like over here, if I compare 101 to 16, by itself it's erroneous. I need to compare it to the prior supply waves, and I need to compare demand to the prior demand waves. You know, again, you see this decreasing, then this increase. So the first step in volume wave reading, at least, is you need to compare demand to demand and supply to supply before you compare supply to demand. You must, in my opinion, because at least you're going to get make less errors. I mean, I make less errors like that. So supply to supply increasing, then supply to demand. You see, 21 to 76. Oh, supply increased. How much? Almost more than 3.5 times. Then compare supply to demand. Here again, compare supply to supply, increased. Then compare supply to demand. Of course, over here, all of a sudden, you had what? You had an increase in demand. What, from what? 9 to 32. What happened? On the pullback, supply responded. Supply responded with only 18. Now 18 is quite, it is a lot, relatively speaking. It's, you know, I would like weaker pullbacks, you know. So over here, for example, again, supply, what does it do? It increases. So that you must You must be on the lookout for that supply increasing, and then the weak response, right? And then looking for, and then right here, demand. After demand increase, then the response for 51 to 27. It's not extremely weak, so it's going to continue. Supply increasing, then the demand. We just keep on doing it like that. Again, I'm explaining, one of the things is comparing supply to supply, demand to demand, then, supply versus demand. That will give you a much completer picture of, what the story is. Second thing is, you want to watch the supply and demand patterns. When you're comparing supply to supply, see if that supply is decreasing or is it increasing. Is it decreasing or increasing? So supply to supply, demand to demand, is the supply increasing or is it decreasing? And then comparing supply to demand and try to see what the ratio is. If it's really weak, like over here, you have 76 to 19. That is like weak. 101 to 16. Over here, this one changed. It just shifted because demand got stronger. Like here. But when you see this, 19 to 81 to 15, right? It got increased. But then what happened? Demand dropped off from 115 to 28 on this shorting of the thrust, and supply increased. So this, it just becomes, as a Wyckoff trader, it has to become habitual. All right, so we compare supply to supply, boom, demand to demand, supply to demand, and that's it. And knowing the levels and all of that to see how they respond in areas. All right, folks, take care.